in their lives, because it is part of life. It's a very big part of life, and it'll be an even bigger part of your children's lives if you don't get involved and do something about it to minimize its effect.
Well, I volunteered for Vietnam back in 1964. I wanted to do something. I wanted to do my fair share. I wanted to fight communism. And they tried to kill me before I got there, so somehow God stepped in. I didn't have to go. But I started reading while I had time in the hospital. I started reading, and I learned and figured out that every plank on the Communist Manifesto was intact in America today. So it's like, what are we fighting for? Who are we fighting for? The Vietnamese didn't pull the Gulf of Tonkin. Saddam Hussein wasn't behind 9/11. And I don't believe Gaddafi was taking pretty good care of his people when Obama decided to invade Libya too. It's like every war we fought has been fictionalized.
That whole mess over there was just him giving his buddies in the Muslim Brotherhood a hand up to, yeah, but that was some sort of repayment for a favor. I'm not sure, I'm not certain what that favor is that they did for him, but that whole taking out of Gaddafi was Obama repaying a favor. The same thing with this fellow, with getting Morsi in power. That was repaying a favor. And I think he was surprised when the Egyptian people rose up and removed Morsi from power, because I don't think he expected that to happen. But all of that just reeks of just more cronyism that's going on, and it just you have to kind of wonder about what's going on in Ukraine. They just playing a stage show for us, and because Obama did tell that Russian diplomat that he would have more flexibility after the election. Well, now here we are after the election, and he certainly is being flexible. He's bending over backwards to not do anything to honor the treaty that we had in Ukraine. Not that I'm saying I want to get us involved in a war over there, but we do have a treaty with them to protect that country from Russia. But how much have we done to do that?
Well, things are so strange these days that right now I'm more impressed with Putin than I am Obama. I mean, Putin seems to be working for his people, and I've referred to this whole New World Order thing that Bush gave us, and as the whole war on terror is a war against anyone, anywhere in the world that doesn't want to go along with one world government of the bankers, by the bankers, and for the bankers.
Well, that's really what it is. That really is what it is. It boils down to, follow the money. Follow the money. And when you follow the money, it leads right back to the banks. And, and who's making the money. And, even right down to just everything. It's just everything. And I don't think a lot of people, to be honest, it wasn't until somewhat recently that I understood the influence that, the banking cartel, or I guess you could call it the money cartel, known as the bankers, had as an influence, on our lives. I mean, a lot of people believe that the Federal Reserve is actually a federal government entity, and because once you do a little looking, it doesn't take much. You realize real quickly that it's not. It's private bankers. I mean, they charge us interest just for the U.S. government to have currency, and it's we will always be in the hole as long as we're doing that.
Well, that's plank number 5 on the Communist Manifesto, and what we're going through now, it's actually, and they've written this in stone, James, It's called the Georgia Guidestones. They want to reduce the world's population to a manageable 500 million, which means they want to wipe out pretty much 2/3 of the world's population. And they're doing that with plank number 9 on the Communist Manifesto is corporate farms. Can you say Monsanto? Monsanto is responsible for the genetically modified food that rats won't eat, but they're feeding it to your children. The Monsanto is also responsible for the pesticides, the Roundup that we're putting on our crops. And I believe they also gave us Agent Orange too. So we've got a corporate farms, and I've told people anytime a communist regime takes over a country, they go after three classes of people almost in order. The first is the farmers, because they don't want us to be able to feed ourselves. Second, they go after the intelligentsia. That's anybody that's smart enough to know what they're doing. And third, they go after the veterans and the law enforcement that are still loyal to the old regime. That would be us oath keepers. And that's exactly what's happening to our veterans right now. And I'd like to see, and I felt that this Operation American Spring was doing on the behalf of the veterans. I'm not quite sure exactly whose behalf they're doing it on now, but you know, I supported this whole month. I devoted to the idea of Operation Spring. I mean, a few months ago, they were supposed to have a million Muslim march. And 20 Muslims showed up, and 1 million bikers showed up.
Right. Yeah, that was quite entertaining, I've got to say.
Well, I've been supporting the Rolling Thunder for 20 years. Artie Mueller put that together. I've advertised for it every year. I'm an old biker. You know, so, I mean, I was a biker back before they glamorized us. You know, when you wore a leather jacket and rode on 2 wheels, you could bet you'd get hassled by the cops. And the 1 million bikers that showed up, well, you can't have a permit. We're not giving you a permit. Well, we don't need your stinking permits.
Oh, yeah, you know, it's kind of funny you bring up those permits. I actually sent off a permit request for Operation American Spring to the exact address, wrote it down perfectly, that was on the form. And what do you know? It was returned stating that it was sent to an unknown address.
Well, that doesn't surprise me. I got busted for marijuana in Texas back when it was a 99-year potential sentence, and I applied to the after I'd been out of jail, after I'd been out of prison, after I hadn't been arrested for anything in 40 years. I decided I'd try to get my all my rights back. But the BATF, that office was closed. They didn't. There wasn't any place you could do that anymore. And I was kind of excited when they passed medical marijuana in Arizona. I said, wow, maybe for the first time in 45 years I won't be a criminal anymore. But turned out I didn't qualify for medical marijuana because I was too healthy. And I said, the reason I'm so healthy is because I've been smoking it for 45 years.
Yeah. Kind of funny how that goes. Well, you know, as a big pharma, they couldn't ever let that become legal. They'd lose trillions of dollars themselves.
That's right. And, I mean, it cures cancer, folks. Go see Phoenix Tears. Gentleman I've had on my show before. He's in exile now in Bosnia or someplace like that, and he cured cancer with hash oil there in Canada. PhoenixTears.com. It's pretty interesting. but that's a billion-dollar industry for the medical professions, and the doctors don't make any money off of you if you're healthy and if you eat the right foods and you get the right minerals. You don't get sick. Your body can handle all that.
That's what kind of one of is just another symptom of the problem that's going on in this country. I mean, yeah, they don't make a dime if you're healthy, and as long as they continue to treat an illness and potentially even keep you sick, then they're still making money, and that's a pretty heinous attitude to have when you're talking about people's lives, But really, that's one of the many symptoms of the problem we have in this country. Why we started, why Overpasses for America started, and why Operation American Spring is going to D.C. was we've got a big problem in this country, and it really just all points right back to the dollar sign, and until we can get those dollar signs away from controlling what's actually happening, what's going on in this country, until we can bring that to a head and bring that to a stop, we've got a problem that won't go away. I hear a lot of people talk about, their particular issue. They talk about their particular issue. Well, we've got to stop this. It's like, well, okay, I understand that we need to do that. But then the question I have is, how are you going to stop that if you don't fix the core of the problem to begin with? And so, if you don't fix what's going on in D.C. with the people that are controlling everything that's going on in our lives, then how in the world are you going to fix that problem? And, of course, there is no answer for that, because you do have to fix the core of the issue. It's kind of like, if you want to cure cancer, you don't go get a haircut. You have to go after the cancer, and so these other issues, they're problems. They are problems, but until you get rid of the sickness, you'll never cure the problem, and that's why we concentrate on what we're doing. Even with Overpass, I understand that Obama is not the source of the problem. Anybody that's done any amount of research understands it's not going to live with the problem. But he's just the poster child of the problem. But if we can get them reacting to us instead of us reacting to them, then we have a fighting chance. And that's why, Overpasses for America, that's why we focus on getting him removed, so we can get them backpedaling. And then, if you expose one, you can take down the house of cards.
Well, I agree with that. And I said the only mistake the bikers made when we were 1 million strong in Washington, D.C., we should have gone into Congress and arrested some of these traitors. And these people are really traitors if they're doing all of this to us, and they are stealing money. The banks, the Federal Reserve banks, Bank of America, Wells Fargo, Chase Manhattan, they are profiting, and they are making money off of this drug trade. They are making money. They're laundering the money. I mean, we've got our troops over there, because those in Afghanistan, because those nasty old Taliban that we've heard so much demonization about, they were destroying the opium poppy crops. So now we've got our troops guarding the opium poppy crops. We've got the CIA that took over most of the drug cartels in South America. So they've got the cocaine and the marijuana trade down there. They're using the illegals to bring it up here. And who do we go after? I mean, we're putting a kid on the street that bought a little bit of pot. We're putting him in jail so he can work for IBM. We're arresting the wrong people here. We're arresting the wrong people.
Well, we are exactly. You know, for years I called the DEA the Drug Export Import Agency because they are the #1 trafficker of drugs in the world. And it's the same thing with the ATF. They're the #1 trafficker of weapons in the world. And until we can, and anyway, well, what do we get? You know, it's back to what I was just about. Is what's the source of the problem? The source of the problem is our government, and then of course those who manipulate them. And then we get back, you know, and then we roll back once again to those bankers. And as long as they're making money, we're never going to be free.
They're making the same kind of money they're making off these private prisons that they're setting up. So they don't have any. We've got more Americans in prison per population, percentage-wise, than Red China, than the Soviet Union. We are putting more people in prison camps than anywhere, and we're building more now, James. They're these FEMA camps that we've been talking about, just conspiracy theorists have been talking about. They're real. They're all over the country, and now places like South Carolina, they're using them for homeless people. Now, there's a lot of veterans that are homeless right now. I think that's a shame.
Yeah, actually, the largest percentage, the largest group of homeless in the United States are veterans.
10 years ago, I came up with a plan called Liberty Villages. I wanted low-cost structures. I wanted to go back into the family farms and take a abandoned family farm, put low-cost structures on it to house veterans, and let them live there free. If they mend the fences, if they milk the goats, if they weed the gardens, grow our own food, generate our own electricity from the wind, the sun, everything God gave us. And I said, then you don't need governments and you don't need the banks at all. And the next thing I know, I was supposedly dying in a hospital. Kept drugged for 3 months.
I actually came up with another idea that we could do with all of the veterans that don't have a job right now. And you know, they all joined the military, you know, with purpose and with the belief that they'd be serving the country. And, you know, of course, you know, what ended up happening to them, you know, when they went off and fought these wars for Halliburton was something else entirely. But, you know, what we could do, and you know, if I ever had the opportunity to make this happen, would be to give them a job working on the border, doing exactly what they were doing, fighting these corporate wars. And that's, you know, protecting the country and from a foreign invasion. And that's exactly what we've got going on with the south border right now is a foreign invasion. And until we do something about that, you know, we've got things are just going to continue to get worse.
I was involved with a presidential candidate in 1996. His name was Charles Collins. He was the first Republican to sign up for the presidency. Wealthy Georgia businessman, banker, Rhodes Scholar, brilliant man. And I traveled with him from coast to coast. We went to all the Republican caucuses, and every time he got up to speak, every cameraman on stage turned the cameras off and pointed them at the ground while he was speaking. So most people never heard of Charles Collins. In 2 of the states, they actually unplugged his microphone while he was talking, so nobody could hear that he believed we could do the same thing that Kennedy tried to do with Executive Order 1110, issue our own money. United States notes is what Kennedy issued. I got one of them in my wallet. And but Nobody ever heard him. Nobody ever heard him. And of course, we were demonized by Southern poverty law too. False patriots is what they listed. Me, Charles Collins, and I believe Colorado Senator Charlie Duke. We were all listed in there in the SPLC's thing. And I had a friend after I got out of the hospital. I had a friend that lived down on the border, lived down in Douglas, Arizona, and he called me up and said, "Clay, I want to help you get the Free America started again. I got an organization down here called Ranch Rescue. His name is Casey Nethercott." And he called me on the same phone that they tapped to arrange my accident. And I said, "Well, Casey, I appreciate what you're trying to do, what you want to do, but it's kind of expensive." And he said, "Clay, I got $1.5 million in one account. Money's not an issue. Come down here and talk to me." I said, "Buy me breakfast, Casey. I will be there in the morning." I got down in the morning, but they had shot him coming out of Safeway with my breakfast. They ended up, Southern Poverty Law sued him. This was on 60 Minutes. Southern Poverty Law sued him and ended up putting him in prison in Texas and took his 70-acre ranch away on the border because he was stopping the illegals. He formed a militia. They were stopping the illegals, turning them over to the sheriff, and they shot him coming out of Safeway with my breakfast. So,
wow. That's wow.
And then Southern Poverty Law sued him. Morris Dees sued him on behalf of the 2 illegals that he had arrested in Texas, who said he pistol whipped them. He didn't. And they retried him and ended up putting him in prison, took his 70-acre ranch away, and I don't know what's happened to Casey now. He disappeared here. So it's all, with, and if you remember, George Bush allowed the NSA to tap everybody's phones in 2004. Mine was the first one they tapped, and they knew everything I was doing and did something to interfere with that. Even to the point of me and Bill Cooper were broadcasting on worldwide shortwave. Bill Cooper and I decided we would work together and publish his magazine Veritas and my magazine, The Free American. We would work together and save some money and coordinate our efforts. And a week later, Bill Cooper was dead. They shot him too. They shot Bill Cooper. They shot Casey Nethercott. They were successful in killing Bill Cooper. They missed on Casey Nethercott, but he's disappeared. I don't know what's happened to him.
Well, hey, listen, how much time do we have left on the show? Because we are ready to hit the road. I've got all the crews ready to load up in the car, and just it's time to get to heading off to D.C. here so we can get those articles of impeachment delivered.
All right,
and
if you would,
535 copies of those. We'll be posting those online. As soon as we get done with those, and so you'll be able to get your own copy. Everybody can get their own copy, and everybody should get their own copy so they can see exactly what's going on.
All right. If you would, I'd like to. I've got about 24 minutes left on this hour. If you can leave any time that you want, but I'd like to discuss a little bit about Operation American Spring. I'm a little upset with Colonel Riley. He was supposed to come on my show on the 17th of this month, and he decided not to show. He didn't want to show up. He didn't want to come on, and he didn't even want you to come on my show. And I'm having a little hard time understanding that, because all I've been doing is trying to promote it. But now because of of what he's done here, basically calling me anti-Semitic and not wanting people, anybody connected with American Spring, to come onto my radio show. I have a real hard time understanding that unless we are being set up with, if they're using Operation Spring to get a bunch of patriots, people that are dissatisfied with Obama, and Harry Riley has made it real clear that he is upset with Obama. So,
well, I don't think that's what's going on. You know, there's a lot of misinformation going on out there, and you know, it's you know, everybody seems to get caught up in it. You know, I've had the you know, attacks on myself with, you know, absolutely unfounded, and you know, as you know, that's just one of those battles we have to fight. You know, I've never really gotten any indication, you know, from you know, Colonel Riley about any worries like that. You know, and I wasn't aware of that. He hadn't been on your show. You know, of course, he actually books everything himself, and you know, I do everything for Overpasses separately.
yeah.
And so, you know, what's going on there and what's going on here, you know, we work together, but we're not the same movement. You know, I really believe in what they're doing up there in D.C. And when, you know, once we had, you know, had vetted everything that was going on there, and of course there were copycat movements that sprouted up, and we had to make sure we got a hold of the right one. There's still copycat movements out there. It may end up to be very interesting to see just what happens when we get there, to see if those copycats show up and actually try to instigate something. And that is one of our worries, you know, as far as something that can happen. But you know, it can happen anyway. You know, it's like all the misinformation that was going out after the Bundy Ranch siege, that, you know, there were troops, you know, ATF and DHS, you know, troops massing near there, but yet not a single photograph showed up about it. And that's either one of two things: that it was either grandstanding by people trying to get 15 minutes of fame based on lies, or it was government disinformation, you know, specifically intended to discredit patriots, you know, by putting false stuff out there and having people cry wolf. And, you know, and so we just have to deal with that kind of thing, and that, you know, there's not much we can do with it, and you know, maybe that was one of those things where, you know, that information got out about you, and, you know, unfortunately there's nothing I could do about that.
No, and it happens all the time, even on a local basis. If I get involved with a local group like Truth Seekers out of Austin or Tucson Breakfast Club, they run people in that sit over in the corner and whisper and try to disrupt the meeting and try to, well, you know, Clay does this, Clay does that, and I make it pretty apparent where I stand. You know, I don't believe any Arabs in a cave in Afghanistan made the World Trade Center fall down, or got the Air Force to shut down. You know, so I certainly don't buy into, you know, the government lines there.
Well, no, it's kind of like, you know, a lot of people look at Eric Holder and think he's, you know, I'm finally starting to see him for what he is, you know, a crooked, evil person. And a little bit of trivia as far as those government storylines go is he was actually the investigator for the DOJ in the Alfred P. Murrah Federal Building bombing back on April 19th in Oklahoma City. And a lot of people don't know that. I didn't know that till just very recently.
Who was that? Who was that?
I'm sorry?
Who was the investigator?
Eric Holder, our current U.S. Attorney General.
Oh, boy.
And so, yeah, that man's been causing problems in this country for decades. And, you know, he is part of the problem, you know. But anyway, I hate to cut things off.
That's
We've got 20 minutes to go, but we are loaded up and ready to roll, and I don't want to be on the phone when we're going. We've still got 11 hours left to drive to get to our destination, and it's going to be quite an event.
All right, sir. I wish I could be there with you. I appreciate you taking the time to do my show, and you're welcome back anytime. I appreciate what you're doing on the overpasses. It's one way to reach the people, and it's a great way to reach people. So thank you for your work, James. And we'll see you. You have a safe trip, and feel free to give me a call anytime. Let me know what's going on there in Washington, D.C.
Will do. Will do. And thank you for having me on your show.
Thank you, James. Bye-bye now.
Bye-bye.
All right, we got that, and we still don't have Crusade up. Let's see if we can get Crusade up. Did we lose Blog Talk too? Wait a minute here. Yeah, we lost Blog Talk. Okay.
Welcome to Blog Talk Radio.
To start your show now, press 1. To hear important instructions.
Since it appears you're calling back into a live show, we are reconnecting you now.
All right, sorry about that.
Did you ever get the feeling? Are you staring at the ceiling? He took it out to defend the Constitution States of America. And they find it in a grave somewhere. By some, he's been called controversial.
Now, keep in mind that some of my guests have been approached by Homeland Security or FBI saying, why are you going on the Clay Douglas show?
My message to those guys, if they're listening this morning, is go get a cup of coffee. Maybe you'll learn something.
We both took the same oath, to defend the Constitution against all enemies, foreign and domestic. I don't recall there being an expiration date on that.
And as long as we stay passive, we'll survive. He is the free American, Clay Douglas. We'll make it truth and fact is, all steps pay our taxes, and that is why the bankers keep us down. Catch the free American weekdays at 7 a.m. Pacific, 10 a.m. Eastern. Learning public school and get our fathers off of history, all fighting back for liberty so we can play the tyrant fool. For the podcast and more details, visit www.freeamerican.com or catch the podcast by phone by calling 832-999-8621.
All right, we're back, and if you want to call in, I'll take calls, 646-915-8774, except for Rabbi Ted, who I will kick as soon as I see his ass on my show. He won't be on my show no more. He won't be in my chat rooms. To hell with him. I'm tired of his bullshit. I ain't gonna put him in. Now, I just it had a nice interview with James Neighbours, and if you didn't catch all of that, I don't know when they cut me off from Blog Talk. Don't know when they cut me off, and when I finally got back on Crusade. We're still. I think the whole show was recorded on Truth Radio. But it'll also be on the YouTube. I believe I've got it in on YouTube. So we're broadcasting now. I wasn't paying total attention to the chat room, so don't know when it went down. Don't know. Looks like it went down about the same time. So Rabbi Ted's a Canadian, huh? Canadian. All right. Hello, Lisa. Okay, don't know. I don't know exactly what time that happened here. Trying to check it. But, well, don't matter. First half of this show was recorded on YouTube. It'll be up on the Facebook, Fear American Sex 9. Hello, Lisa. How are you? And, all right. There was got a few news items here. The citizens of Venezuela are rising up against their socialist government. This is being kept from you by their media. Evidently, yeah, it's coming from Overpasses of America. We'll check that out. We'll check that out later. I had some things that I wanted to talk about here. Let's look at this. Give me a moment to get set up here. Did I have this marked here? There was a woman that went up to the Bundy Ranch, and she had a report from there. I will try to find that. Trying to find it. Let's look here. We got a few things up of interest here on the Facebook page, Free America 69, Joel Skousen's Red Dawn warning to America. And I've also got the Rolling Thunder thing put up there. We've got a chemtrails 100% proof of what the chemtrails are doing to your global engineering. Okay, let's see if we can go back and find this. This was a politician, I believe, that let me do this. We were just talking with James about the drug trade, and I've had Veterans Today editor on my show a number of times. And he is actually Democrat. He said the Republicans are the problem. Of course, that's That's the that's the divide and conquer plan. And now we got somebody from the National Director, Laura J. Alcorn, and she says Obama's, and they're going after Obama, kind of. Congratulations, Colorado, her post says. You become the sleazy drug capital of America. And evidently this woman on the Republican side, on the conservative side, likes the idea of putting people in jail because they've defied a government edict that, ooh, you're not supposed to have this stuff. You're not supposed to do drugs. Take those pharmaceuticals. Take that Valium. Take that Luvox. Pay your doctor. Well, okay, we've lost a little ground. We got 20 states where they've got medical marijuana, so we've relented a little bit. If you bribe a doctor, if you go pay a doctor, whether you need to see him or not, if you go pay that doctor, he'll give you a prescription. He'll give you a get-out-of-jail-free pass so you can smoke some marijuana. Just don't pay any attention to the whole idea that nobody's ever died from marijuana. 50 people a year die from aspirin. How many die from tobacco? How many died? But we still got to demonize it. So Colorado has legalized marijuana, abolished the laws against victimless crimes pertaining to marijuana. And so now you're something sleazy. Instead of being the most progressive, the most forward-looking, the most intelligent state in the union, the one state that's standing up for freedom, that's trying to stop a police state and allowing people to walk down the street and smoke marijuana. Wow! Now you become the sleazy drug capital of America. Obama's influence, they're trying to blame this on Obama because I guess he was at least a president that was honest enough to tell you he smoked it, unlike Bill Clinton, who never inhaled, and unlike George Bush, who brought all the cocaine and the heroin into the country. Since Mr. Obama was elected, Laura Alcorn says, something has risen over this nation. It is a spirit of darkness that is seeping into every aspect of our daily lives. After 5 years of Obama rule, every socialist, communist, and Marxist within the continental U.S. feels like they have a voice. The only socialists, communists, and Marxists I know are the Jews. But she doesn't say that. She wants to tar paper somebody else. There has never been a greater demand or outcry for entitlement programs, legal street drugs, taxpayer-funded abortions are free stuff. There is one more world government dictates and totalitarian rule in the Obamacare bill than there is in George Orwell's 1984. Obama's dream of turning America into a godless, rudderless, immoral, anything goes European socialist nightmare has come true. And even as they did not like to retain God in their knowledge, God gave them over to a reprobate mind to do those things which are not convenient, who knowing the judgment of God that they which commit such things are worthy of death, not only do the same, but have pleasure in them. Romans 1:28. I mean, This is what they do, folks. They take a quote out of the Bible that suits them. They ignore the words of Jesus, who said, "Beware the Jews who say they are Jews but are not, or of the synagogue of Satan." Now, what they've and here they're mixing again apples and oranges. And they're probably, I'm surprised they didn't quote the chapter in there that says the government has the right to do to you whatever they want to do to you. They say, and this is from probably a different source, Colorado has seen a boon in revenues since the legalization of retail marijuana sales. But Denver's tourism industry is especially feeling the impact this Easter weekend. This Easter holiday falls on April 20th, or 420, which is a day known across the country as an unofficial holiday for the celebration of marijuana. A Rocky Mountain High. I would say that 420 weekend is a destination weekend here in Denver, because we have people coming from all over for tourism, and there's been a huge spike. Data from Hotels.com show that Denver hotel searches for the weekend of April 18th through 20th have increased by 73% compared to the same time frame in 2013. Denver is already on the list of the top 20 U.S. destinations, but many believe the legalization of marijuana is drawing even more interest to the city. Chris Lunsford, Operations Director of the Denver Pot Shop 3D Cannabis Center, has seen customers from all over the world coming to the city to use cannabis. People are coming nationally from all over the U.S., but also I'm seeing a lot of international guests as well. They're coming here because cannabis is legal in Colorado, and they're all excited to be here. That's right. That's right. And
what's really going on in the world that mainstream media won't tell you. At Truth Radio, you can listen live or listen to a large selection of archived programs. TruthRadio.com. The truth is out there.
Well, that's not a long enough station break for me. Didn't even get to sweeten my coffee. So let's do this. Second hour here. I'll be covering a few other things here. Chemtrails, all that. We don't need that. Yeah, let's do this.
I am a rebel, I am American, and when it needs to be, wait and see, you know I can. I am a rebel, I am a Minuteman, and I will always fight for God and right, that's where I stand. My evolution is revolution. I was born in love, I feel the money, revolution. I'm a farmer, I am a soldier. I just want to be free, but mess with me, you'll see that I'm unvolatile. There is no enemy that is too strong for me. my gun. I'm not afraid to fight for all that's dear and right. And if you tread on me, then you will see an awesome night. I am a rebel, I am American, and when it needs to be, wait and see, you know I can. I fight for liberty, and tyranny, from foreign land or close. Human rights, gotta accept that we must our futures bright. Don't wanna head out, that's not what it's about. Just want a chance to see what the liberty can do for me. And now I stand on hallowed land. No going back, we will attack lines in the sand. 'Cause I'm a rebel, I am American, and when it needs to be, wait and see, you know I can. You know I can. You know I can. You know I can. You know I can.
Alright, I found what I was looking for. I found it. Welcome to the second hour of the Free American. And folks, I do need your help. I do need some donations here. I've got a number of expenses that I've got to do. I got to get the Harley work done. I got a water leak in the trailer. Little things, unexpected things that happen that can't be covered by my Social Security check. And every dime I get in from Social Security or the commissions that I get from Blog Talk Radio, from YouTube, from some of my films, goes to keep this show on the air. And this next week we'll be we just had Jim Neighbours on, and much of that show was interrupted here. We got kicked off of Blog Talk, got kicked off a couple of other things, and but I've got backups on most of these, so you can catch that first hour right here on YouTube or Facebook. Facebook, Free American 69. Now, we just heard from Laura J. Alcorn about the marijuana. Oh, it's a bad stuff. It's bad stuff. It's, Denver and Colorado are becoming the drug capital of the world. Yes, they will. They will. If they're legalizing marijuana, and there's a lot of us that like to smoke it, we're not criminals. We're not drug addicts. We're healthy. We don't, and I don't smoke it right now because I'm in Texas. And in Texas, you can still get 99 years for smoking pot. I wrote books 45 years ago about what is happening right now. It's legal in Colorado, but I can get thrown in jail here in Texas if I happen to find any and had it laying around, or somebody sold it to me and then called the cops and told them they sold it to me because they're working for the DEA. I could go back to prison in Texas. I think that is ridiculous. For 40 years I've been out. I've been living in Arizona. I've been living in California. I've been living in Miami. And I usually had a joint around somewhere to smoke while I did my radio show. But not in Texas. I don't do it in Texas. And this Laura J. Alcorn is the National Director of American Conservative to Conservative. Well, the information she put out about marijuana was designed to paint it negatively, the same way the ADL and Southern Property Law tried to, and now the whole Operation American Spring bullshit with Colonel Riley supporting Israel at the expense of Americans, and hopefully it won't go as far as it could, because what has happened with Colonel Riley, and I've got all of his information up on my website, freeamerican.com. He wrote a letter to the editor basically threatening Obama with Operation American Spring. We're coming for you, Obama. We're coming. You're the worst thing that's ever happened to America, and we're coming from you. When he said we, he means you are coming for there. If you're a part of American Spring, the Secret Service or the FBI could basically arrest you for Obama's threats. Remember, we got this NDAA thing. Now, my guest a few days ago, he's opposing the NDAA with Panda. He didn't sign off on my, he didn't decline to appear on my radio show. He came on. Colonel Riley declined to come on my show because I'm a Jew hater, he says. I've told you over and over again, I don't care who your grandmother slept with. And you've got, if you were born into a Jewish family, you can walk out of it. You can change your idea. I don't believe that you were necessarily born with this evil stroke. I think that the people that joined the whole Zionist movement or follow the Talmud, I believe those are evil people. They think you can rape 3-year-old children, you can have sex with 3-year-old children, and your God is going to permit it. Well, that ain't the God of Jesus, and that ain't the God of what you call Christians. And if you say you're a Judeo-Christian, and that Judeo means the Talmud, you're a follower of the Talmud, then you are a Jew who calls himself a Jew, but you're really a member of the synagogue of Satan. And that doesn't necessarily mean Lucifer either, and I will explore that in the year to come. Now, this American conservative to conservative, while they're trying to encourage the police state in which you can be arrested for something you've got in your pocket, that you don't have to be high, you just got to have it in your pocket. Marijuana, cocaine, heroin, and all the heroin is grown and produced right there in Afghanistan, and our troops are guarding these shipments and guarding the opium poppy fields. This is why Pat Tillman was killed. And when I exposed 9/11 as an exaggerated case of Jewish lightning because Larry Silverstein bought condemned buildings from Jews at the Port Authority, blew them up, planted explosives in them, and blew them up. And I'm sorry, my one guest that was Jewish from Operation American Spring, he insisted buildings were just candles. They could be lit at the top and suddenly fall to the ground. Sorry, I ain't buying that. Now, Laura Alcorn, she brought up, where the hell is this? Okay, not there. Where is it? a lady, Mrs. Flores, Flore, documented what she had witnessed in a very non-politically correct fashion, gives her perspective on what took place. She exposes the truth about the Bundy BLM slowdown. Pretty lady, got a picture of her here feeding a calf. She says, friends, I had the privilege and opportunity to learn to make a calf suck a bottle to save her life. It's going to take a lot to revive the calves that were nearly dead when they were returned to the Bundy Ranch because they had been separated from their mothers during the roundup, and a few most likely won't make it. I'm headed back to the Bundys today at 1 p.m. I hope you'll meet me there. Take I-15 north towards Mesquite, get off at exit 112. I'll be on the left-hand side of the road about 2.5 miles down. Give yourself about an hour and a half for traffic. I guess that means if you're coming from LA. This isn't my normal, nice, politically correct email, so hang on to your seats. I can tell you after everything I've seen, this roundup was not about grazing fees. First and foremost, like all Nevadans, I love my country and I support my government. I proudly support the Nevada being home to the military installations needed to defend our nation, the federal government test site to develop equipment necessary for that defense, and any other federal lands and facilities needed to conduct the true business of our federal government. That said, I struggle to see the compelling federal issues of where cows eat. I spent a majority of my time in Bunkerville over the last week with the Bundy family and their supporters. During my time in Bunkerville, I couldn't help but think about Nevada's upcoming 150th birthday, and that the federal government continues to patronize our state by trying to overstep and police our Nevada citizens. I wonder when the federal government will think Nevada is mature enough to set our own grazing rules or enforce our own laws. I didn't meet one Nevadan supporting the BLM or their removal of the cows. If Nevadans don't care about which land is used for grazing, why should a bureaucrat who works for the federal government get to trump that? I had the opportunity to meet the American-minded Bundy supporters from all over our country. They were peacefully protesting the BLM's actions, and I'm excited to report the Bundy family was successful in keeping the peace until the BLM stopped their roundup and returned the Bundy's cattle. And remember, you had the other side of this, citizens supposed to be on our side, supposed to care about Americans. They were saying, well, the Bundys, they were just tax protesters. They just didn't want to pay their taxes. They just didn't want to pay that $100,000 for the grass those cows ate. That was my grass. That was my grass. That is the socialist mentality that Laura J. Alcorn tried to attribute to the people that just want to be able to smoke their pot in peace without going to prison for it, without having to be a lawbreaker to smoke it. She says, and this is a Nevada Assemblywoman, she says, I also report the action of some spineless, poor excuses of BLM staffers. An armed BLM officer picked up Mr. Bundy's elderly sister from behind, a total sneak attack, and body slammed her to the ground. This woman is the mother of 11 and just survived cancer following that brutal incident Another BLM officer ordered his dog to attack Mr. Bundy's son, Ammon. As Ammon Bundy was trying to get the dog off his leg, the Nazi-minded bully tased him twice, once in the neck and the second right above the heart. If that wasn't enough, the brutal BLM thugs beat up Dave Bundy, a pilot out of Las Vegas, detained him, stole his iPad because it contained the brutal footage, confiscated many other items out of his car, transported him to Henderson where he was further detained, then released him in the middle of the street. They didn't stop there. No, they detained two more young guys while they were herding some more cattle into Overton. These men and women are Americans attacking America. I'm speechless. If you saw the number of police agencies united, I hope you'd be curious. We're talking about dozens of our finest SWAT members from Metro, black and white cars, EMT, fire rescue trucks, detention buses, aka paddy wagons, over 50 Ranger and BLM vehicles, numerous highway patrol vehicles, and a Black Hawk helicopter on the Moapa airfield, just to name a few. We watched the Waco massacre and Ruby Ridge while the BLM preparing for a Bunkerville slaughter? I believe in my heart, because of these last two disasters, Americans from all over our country traveled from afar to stand with the Bundys and let our government know enough is enough. I'm proud to stand with my fellow Americans. And folks, this is just why I do what I do, why I started the Free American, why I started the magazine, why I started this radio show, why I started the militias. I said I would never sit back and watch another Waco happen without trying to do something. And hopefully this show, the information I put out on this show, resonates and motivated Americans from all over the country to go there to stand with the Bundys. And this lovely lady here, that assemblyman from Nevada, that Ms. Flory, that went there and got down on her hands and knees to feed a calf milk that was almost starved to death. She says the numbers do not calculate. The federal government had the authority and an open checkbook to spend $10 million or more for a maximum return of $200,000. Here's how I calculate that number. The BLM might collect maybe 400 heads of cattle, taking into account the number of cattle they'd kill while rounding them up. From the roundup, the cattle would go to auction. How much do you think you'll pay for a half-dead, beat-up cow? Let's say they were able to successfully auction off 400 cows for $500 each. I'm being very generous. The brainiac head of BLM authorized $10 million or more to maybe recoup $200,000. Really? As a CEO, I'd fire that decision maker immediately. In their mind, maybe it's worth getting rid of the cows or just killing them so the cows won't destroy equipment for a project they want to implement. The BLM tried to paint their actions as enforcing the law. However, there are several other reasons why the BLM chose to pick this fight. It cannot be a coincidence that the place where the Bundys have grazed their cattle for hundreds of years would suddenly become an animal refuge for desert tortoises. Is it really desert tortoises? If so, why would the BLM be euthanizing them? That's right, the BLM has euthanized 700 to 800 desert tortoises. Trust but verify. I'll have this issue up in this coming issue, May issue of the Free American. Now, we're also seeing reports that the BLM land in Gold Butte is very desirable for energy projects, which may have prompted this sudden strong-arm tactic. And don't trust, verify. I'll have links there to read the BLM's own report on the project. A major concern in all of this was how the BLM treated the cattle. It is completely irresponsible that after years of conversations, the feds would begin their roundup during the season when calves are being born. In this mess, newborn calves were separated from their mothers. Some were trampled in their holding pens and left for dead. A helicopter acted as a cowboy to herd the cows, causing a few to have heart attacks and die. The conditions of the holding pens where they kept the cows for days were heartless and cruel. Where was PETA? I don't want to comment about the upstanding citizens who came to show their support, including the Oath Keepers, a non-partisan organization of currently and formerly serving military, police, and first responders who are committed to defending the Constitution. They are honorable men and women who acted professionally and respectfully. There are many groups of freedom fighters who travel from all over our country to stand together. I have a very serious request of all agency officers, and that request is not to obey your superiors when given a direct order to attack your fellow Americans fighting for the freedoms granted us by the Constitution. Take a sick day or a vacation. I didn't become an elected official to join an elite club. I ran for office to protect the people and be a true voice for the people. I take my oath seriously. It's time for Nevada to stand up to the federal government, demand the return of the BLM lands to the people of Nevada. BLM has shown their true colors. And agenda. As elected officials in Nevada, it is our responsibility to be leaders on this issue and work together, Republicans and Democrats, to make sure this doesn't happen again. Together, we need to write legislation to protect our state's rights from the feds. And Obama is accused by congressmen of illegal action at the Bundy Ranch. He cites a severe violation of U.S. Code 43 U.S.C. Section 1733, subsection C. After the Bureau of Land Management agents backed down from their intimidating stance at the Bundy Ranch last weekend, ample evidence has surfaced indicating the standoff between the government and the Nevada ranching family is far from over. Throughout the week-long stalemate, members of the Bundy family were physically assaulted by armed officers. Numerous cows were shot dead, and protesters faced threats of gunfire for merely expressing their outrage. Immediately after what many considered a victory against a tyrannical federal agency, a number of leftist voices, most notably Senator Harry Reid, indicated the action against this family will continue. In response, Texas Republican Steve Stockman sent a letter to Barack Obama, the Department of the Interior Secretary Sally Jewell, and BLM Director Neil Cornsey, laying out his position that any such actions by the agency would violate the U.S. Constitution. Because of this standoff, he wrote, I have looked into BLM's authority to conduct such paramilitary raids against American citizens, and it appears that BLM is acting in a lawless manner in Nevada. He cited the limited powers granted to the federal government, noting that the Bureau has no right to assume preemptory police powers, that role being reserved to the states, and explained many federal laws require the federal government to seek assistance from local law enforcement whenever the use of force becomes necessary. The letter, including a section of the Code 43 U.S.C. Section 1733, subsection C, stating exactly that point. When the Secretary determines that assistance is necessary in enforcing federal laws and regulations relating to the public land or their resources, he shall offer a contract to appropriate local officials having law enforcement authority within their respective jurisdictions with the views of achieving maximum feasibility reliance upon local law enforcement officials in enforcing such laws and regulations. In the case of the Bundy Ranch, he continued, the relevant local law enforcement officials appear to be the Sheriff of Clark County, Nevada, Douglas C. Gillespie. Gillespie, however, conspicuously took a back seat to BLM forces during the standoff. Indeed, Stockman wrote, the exact type of crisis that the federal government has provoked at the Bundy Ranch is the very type that Congress knew could be avoided by relying on local law enforcement officials. The stated purpose of the correspondence is for the Obama administration to bring BLM into compliance with 43 U.S. alongside state militia members and the Bundy family in opposing the excessive force employed by the BLM. Stockman's letter adds even more weight to the growing sentiment against federal overreach. The government has a little flyer here. The government has detonated hundreds of nuclear bombs in Nevada and says Cleveland Bundy's cattle could be harmful to the desert tortoise. Now, new documents reveal BLM feds planning more land grabbing. States respond. New information in the form of internet BLM documents has been obtained by Utah Congressman Rob Bishop, illustrating a potential threat of other federal land acquisition. The 22-page report reveals discussions have taken place within the BLM regarding federal government seizure of additional western state lands, either legislatively or through the Antiquities Act. That act gives the president the authority to designate national monuments unilaterally. The BLM described the documents as being just a brainstorming session within the BLM, with no decisions made as to which areas, if any, might merit more serious review and consideration. Another article here says Oath Keepers pour into Nevada from across the nation. Despite the fact that Harry Reid has called these patriots domestic terrorists, the militia members and the Oath Keepers are there to support Cleveland Bundy have peacefully assembled in Bunkerville, Nevada, for more than a week to protect the rancher from armed federal land grabbers. Although the BM has backed off, citing safety concerns, the surly Harry Reid, who has incidentally been busted with his hand into the $5 million solar power cookie jar, commented, well, it's not over. We can't have an American people that violate the law and then just walk away from it, so it's not over. Because of statement like Reid's, a suggestion was made by Oath Keepers founder Stuart Rhodes for reinforcements. Interestingly, shortly after the request for support was made, the Oath Keepers website suffered a mysterious malfunction. Members of the alternative media quickly picked up the reins and made certain that the request was publicized. In response, Oathkeeper from as far away as Alaska are answering the call put out by founder Stuart Rhodes. Below is the latest audio update from Stuart in Bunkerville, Nevada, via the Northwest Liberty News. I got another nice illustration. American terrorist with Harry Reid with a board and a Bundy. If Harry Reid says if Bundy protests are patriots, we are in big trouble. Appearing on KSNV's What's Your Point, Reid berated the Bundy family and protesters, saying, if anyone thinks by any figment of their imagination that what happened up there last week was just people trying posted he put women and children so that they would get hit first. If there was an example of people who were domestic violent terrorist wannabes, these are the guys. I think we should call it that way, Reid concluded. We have a situation that is really untoward. Obviously, Harry Reid would have opposed the founding fathers in their struggle against tyranny. They met the tyrannical government of their day with arms, and they not only bore their arms, they used them against the aggressors. Reid was then rebuked by Senator Dean Heller, Republican of Nevada. What Senator Reid may call domestic terrorists, I call patriots. We have very different view on this. Reid wants to hide the fact that snipers were from federal government pointing their weapons at unarmed protesters and the Bundy family. Yeah, Gary Hunt did an article talking about the Bundy affair, who was not in the front, and they got pictures here of hundreds of people lined up facing off the feds. He said, before I get into the meat of this article, I'm going to present my assessment of the well-known video articles asserting that Sheriff Richard Mack laying claim that at least one of the headline states, former Arizona Sheriff reveals chilling strategy to put women up at the front during Bundy Ranch standoff. When I first read of this proclamation by Sheriff Mack, I had two thoughts. First, if that was the strategy and was implemented, what made him think he should divulge the tactic in a public proclamation? The only answer I could come up with was self-aggrandizement, something like that. Secondly, if women were up front, what would make him feel a need to go public with why they were up front unless he thought he could bolster his reputation by laying claim as the proponent of it? And again, I think that's just an attack on Sheriff Mack, who formed the Constitutional Sheriffs and Police Officers Association, of which I'm pretty sure the Clark County Sheriff is not a part of. Alright. The Let's see. Another article regarding that says a Chinese-backed company is pulling the plug on a multi-billion-dollar solar project near Loftier after it was unable to find customers for the power it would have generated there, a Clark County spokesman said. In a letter, an executive from ENN Mojave Energy LLC informed the county that the company was terminating its agreement to purchase 9,000 acres near Laughlin, stating that the market will not support a project of this scale and nature at that time. Where does that leave us? Does that mean Harry Reid is not involved? Does that mean the BLM is not involved in a land grab that involves ulterior motives? No, on both counts. Just because the connection that the alternative media thought to be the smoking gun has seemingly vanished, it doesn't mean that this doesn't have a lot to do with Harry Reid and big government tyranny. Cleveland Bundy's daughter, Sherry Bundy Cox, had previously explained that her father is simply the last man standing in an area that used to be dominated by family ranches. Neighboring ranches were paying BLM management fees, and the BLM was providing no sort of land maintenance or improvement. This is the alleged purpose of those fees. Her claim is that the Bureau of Land Management used those fees instead to buy out other ranchers. Cleveland Bundy refused this fate, and many years later we have arrived at this point. We know that BLM wants this land bad for whatever reasons. We cannot assume that it has nothing to do with solar power. One deal with the Chinese that fell through does not negate the fact that the BLM mentions the impact of the Bundy Ranch in relation to the Dry Lake Solar Energy Zone. They've provided a screenshot from a document that has since been deleted from the BLM.gov. So how do we make sense of this? We probably won't for some time. The single Reid land deal that fell through was too easy. It runs much deeper than that. Enter BLM whistleblower Rusty Hill. He exposes the fact that the Reid family has been involved in land deals all over Clark County. He also exposes the fact there are serious anomalies in the recording of land transactions in Clark County. BLM plots are shrinking while the adjacently privatized plots of various investors seem to be growing. There is no record of money being exchanged, no record of how this is happening. There's also a matter of the state-of-the-art highway exchange that was put in the middle of nowhere. There has to be a reason for that. Hill also reveals that the BLM purchased one 10-acre plot of land in Clark County for an outrageous sum of $700,000. He claims this land has no obvious strategic importance. The Rusty Hill interview is over 30 minutes and is well worth every second. Hill offers no definitive answers, but he gives several possibilities and tells provocative-minded truth centers where we need to be looking. Don't discount Harry Reid's involvement in the deal. Just one solar deal fell through. It doesn't mean that the scope of things was not much larger to begin with. And let's see if we can, let me see if I can get this up in a way that we can understand it. Alright, let's look at that. See if we can pull it in on this other computer here. Yeah, I believe we can. Let's see. Alright, let's see if we can bring this up. This is a YouTube interview. This is entitled BLM Whistleblower Exposes the Clark County Land Grab. It's much bigger than any of us thought. Trying to get this through here. It ain't showing up here. Why ain't it showing up here? Don't have it here. Well, we're not going to do that, I guess. Sorry about that. Don't know why this ain't working here. That one's still working. We got 15 minutes left. All right, let me check on the, let's check on the chat room here. Where do we got here? Where do we got? The Blog Talk Studio. Coca-Cola's gone. Lisa's still there. Enthralled has logged in. Hey, we've got some callers here. Hello, who do we have from a blocked call here?
Hi, how are you today?
I'm doing fine, my dear. How are you?
Real good.
Who are you? Who am I
I've never
talking
heard your
to?
show before.
Yes, ma'am.
I've never heard your show before, but I'm enjoying listening to you.
Well, thank you. Thank you. I've been doing this a long time, and it's nice to know we're getting new people in that are listening. I am Clay Douglas. I am the Free American. Who am I talking to, dear?
I'm Deborah.
Barbara?
I'm from North Carolina.
All right.
My name's Deborah.
Deborah. Glad to meet you, Deborah. And
nice to meet you.
I had some stories about South Carolina that were fairly disturbing. It seemed like South Carolina has made it illegal for you to be homeless, and if you're homeless, they wanted you to check into a FEMA camp. Have you heard about that story? Has that been on your news?
No.
Well, that's
I don't watch TV.
Very good for you, dear. Very, very good for you. I used to tell people, they say, they asked me about the militias and what they should do. I said, the best thing you can do is take your weapon out, clean it, load it, shoot the TV.
Yep.
So
you sound like a good man.
Well, I try. Now, if you haven't heard of me before, you can go to freeamerican.com. I've got links to all of the radio shows that I do. I've got links to the books that I've written. I've written some fiction and some non-fiction. Mystery Babylon, The New World Order Unveiled. which pretty much details how they've been pulling this whole New World Order crap for a few thousand years. I've said there I don't believe there's any such thing as the New World Order. The New World Order is just the old world order. It's the money changers that Jesus ran out of the temple. They're still with us today. They just changed the name of the temple. They call it the Federal Reserve or the Bank of England or the International Monetary Fund.
Yep.
How is it affecting you? What's happening in North Carolina? Tell me what your concerns are. You're listening to the show, so you're obviously concerned a little bit about the state of our country. With me, it's very easy. I took an oath when I was 17 years old to defend the Constitution against all enemies, foreign and domestic, and I've been trying to do that ever since.
Well, I found out what they were doing to this country back in 1992 and what they were doing to our children, so I pulled all my children out of the public system back in 93, I believe it was, and put them all in Christian school, and I've been telling people else about it.
I am on the board of directors for the Little Red Schoolhouse and Timothy Bible College, which is run by Dr. Jake Wade. For that exact reason, if you educate your children at home, first of all, you avoid the whole ninth plank on the Communist Manifesto, which is taking over education, taking over the schools, and they really, I believe, they indoctrinate the public schools. I call them the public fool system. They simply want to indoctrinate your children rather than educate them and teach them how to think for themselves.
Yep. Yep, so I didn't want that to happen to my children, so I got them out of there. And I've been against it ever since. I used to spend all my time calling up the churches and telling the churches what was going on, but I couldn't seem to get one church to care about any of it.
Many of the churches, if you check them out closely, you'll find they got a Masonic cornerstone, and that church is dedicated to their worshipful masters, and near as I can tell, Satan is the worshipful masters that the Masonic Lodge wants you to worship.
And it's just very sad what's all happened to our country.
Well, there are some of us out there that are trying to change things. It's when I witnessed, I was sitting in Miami, a lot of times just sitting on my boat out there fishing in the Gulf Stream, watching the what happened in Waco, and I told my wife then I cannot sit back and watch something like this happen again on television without trying to do something. So I created my magazine, my radio show, and started the militias to try to offset that should it happen again. And it's happening again. It happened at Columbine, it happened at Sandy Hook. It's somehow they seem to like killing children.
Just so sad. But thank God that we have men like you around this country, so thank God for that. Thank God for you.
Well, I've been kicked out of heaven twice. They kept telling me I wasn't done there. Get back in that body. And they have tried to kill me a number of times. At least 3 in the last 10 years. You know, it's
yeah, I had a very
Yes, ma'am?
I had a very hard time getting on your show to listen to it today.
How did you find me? How did you find the show today?
I just happened to come across you on Blog Talk this morning. So I thought, well, he sounds pretty good. I'm going to check him out. And I had the hardest time. I could not listen to your show. So I went to one of your old shows, and then I heard you tell a man about your phone number, because I was calling the one on the screen and it wasn't working for today's show. So I called that number that you told the man from Friday.
Well, wonderful. I'm glad you found it. We got blocked a couple of times today, but I try for redundancy where we broadcast on Truth Radio, we broadcast on Crusade Radio, both those out of California. And I'm up on YouTube, and my Facebook page is Free American 69. So we get up on a lot of places. We get blocked a lot. The fusion centers there, they don't really like you listening to me, so they try to block it a lot. And you're up there. You're going to be pretty close to Washington D.C. I'm looking for people to report and tell me what is going on up in Washington D.C. on May 18th. They are trying to organize somebody and let the politicians in Washington D.C. know that the people are looking at them, and the people don't like what's going on, and we actually do have the ability to stop that. The government works for us. They've just kind of forgotten that. This has been a takeover, and they've probably been pretty active at this since the War of 1812, when they tried to destroy the original 13th Amendment, which barred lawyers from holding office. If you had a title of nobility, an esquire beside your name, you weren't allowed to run to operate within the government. I think we need to bring that back, personally.
Yep.
Well, Deborah, if you go to freeamerican.com or shop.freeamerican.com, you can pick up some of my books. You can order some of my videos. I've got one called The True Face of FEMA, where they tell you that we're in a war. It's going to be a long war, and it's going to be fought on American soil, just like you saw over there in Nevada at the Bundy Ranch. They tell people, the Colonel John Brinkerhoff was lecturing law enforcement, and I happened to be there to photograph it. Had one of my friends there, John Gentry, that went there and filmed it. In case of a single outbreak of smallpox in a major metropolitan area, we'll need 400,000 well-armed, well-trained, organized, disciplined troops to control the American people, because some of them just won't follow orders. And I told him, I said, yeah, that's true. Some of us won't line up on the Kmart parking lot to get a vaccination that will give us a disease that's been eradicated in this country for 100 years or more. So this is what we're on the lookout for. This is why I do the show, to tell you about this. And if you're going to Washington, D.C. on May 16th, keep in mind that, look, we are individuals. Don't get sucked into this. Don't let the Secret Service think that you are a threat to President Obama. It's okay to protest him, but frankly, we haven't had a president that was on our side since they murdered Kennedy. And before him, Andrew Jackson was the last man to stand up to the banks. Kennedy issued Executive Order 1111-0 and issued United States notes. And of course, the first thing that Johnson did after they killed Kennedy was to recall all of that money, so the only thing you got for dollars in your pocket are United States notes, and you have to pay interest on that borrowed money. We're really looking at the New World Order is a one world government of the bankers, by the bankers, and for the bankers, and we don't really want that, do we?
No. No, we don't. I don't know anybody that wants that.
Well, remember what Benjamin Franklin told us as he walked out of the Constitutional Convention. A woman walked up to him and said, "Mr. Franklin, what type of government have you wrought for us?" He said, "A constitutional republic, ma'am, if you can keep it." And Thomas Jefferson told us, if you ever allow a private bank to issue your money, the banks and the corporations that spring up around them will leave your children homeless in the land we conquered. That's where we're at today. That's what we need to defend against. And that's why I need your support. I need everybody's support out there. I need you to go to Free American, make a donation, whatever you can afford, or go to shop.freeamerican.com, pick up the latest issues of my magazines for $2.99. I tried to cut out all of the middlemen there. I don't pay Hearst for the paper. I don't pay DuPont for the ink. And I don't pay the Postal Service to ship the magazine. You can read it instantly at shop.freeamerican.com. Deborah, thank you for calling in. I appreciate it. Hope you're a regular.
Thank you, and God bless you.
God bless you. Watch over you. You're doing the right thing, educating your own children. Thank you.